you so much, everybody, for coming. My name is Ginnie Chadwyk-Healey, formerly of British Vogue and now contributor to the Telegraph. And a big focus is now on sustainable fashion and how I encourage people to shop for fewer, better items and understand the ingredients of their clothes. That's me in a nutshell. We have an amazing panel here today, but I just wanted to touch upon the fact that we are currently living in very unique times given the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. And I know it was a topic of debate whether we would go ahead with today, so I'm thrilled that the community spirit has meant that we know that this is going to be a huge success given everything that's going on, and I actually firmly believe that King Charles would thoroughly approve of this panel. So thank you for taking the time to join us. And we are going to be discussing the true cost of consumption and what we can do about it. And I have not printed my questions, so I'm going to be looking down occasionally from the saving paper. We have fantastic panellists today for you, all who own and run their own businesses that focus on climate change, and they operate in the B2B environment and the B2 and direct-to-consumer environment as well. And I often think at this part of the talk, I could introduce them, but I'm going to go for the university challenge approach today and ask you all to introduce yourselves and where you work and how you have found yourself here today. So thank you for joining us. Mica, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mica. So I work for a women-led sustainability consultancy called SID Connects, and Aisling at the other end of the panel is one of my colleagues, a co-founder, and Jen sitting in the audience is the third pillar to SID Connects. I'm here today with two hats on because when I'm not working at SID Connects, taking businesses through sustainability frameworks, I'm working as an activist and a campaigner for a fairer, greener fashion industry. So I'm going to talk today about both of those things.
Thank you, Mica. My name is Akhil, Handa. I'm based out of Reading, and I work with what we call think tank, because it's a knowledge-based company called Earth 51. 51 because that's the latitude coordinates that go through Reading. So that's why it's a local business. But unfortunately, all our business is outside of the UK. So we work in the Nordics, in the Baltics, in the US, in Africa, in India. And recently we've been working with the Reading Council as they have complained to us saying you're not doing enough back home, so bring the learnings back home. So we're starting to engage more with local communities, but I think we were born about 2.5 years back when sustainability was still a buzzword, and our job is really very similar to SID Connect, try and help private sector businesses, governments, anyone really, to just become better versions of themselves. Because too often companies are saying, you've got to be better, and then everyone says, how do I do that? And then for the how is where we come in. So that's what we do.
So my name's Leanne Duffield. I also have two hats on. I have this business, which is the Ground Floor Good Life Hub, which is during the day a co-working space, and we run lots of wellbeing events. And I also have another business called Happy Larder Co, which is, we have a stand out there and it's a loose leaf tea company. And that business was established to actually work with domestic abuse charities and be a funding stream to help work there, and actually as in the process of looking for a product to build a business around, I decided on tea because there's a lot of modern day slavery and human rights abuses, and because most of the workers on the farms are also women, for me it was creating a 360 approach to everything that we did with the business.
Hi everyone, my name is Aisling. So as Mica mentioned, I'm co-founder of SID Connects, but in my previous life I worked in the beauty industry for many years where I used to work with Ginnie. So when she was at Vogue, I was PR for like big beauty brands including Estee Lauder and Clarins. I often call myself the reformed greenwasher because I was behind the scenes on the not so pretty side of business, and now I'm trying to help businesses sort it out on the other side. So thanks for coming and giving it the time.
Okay, we've all been there. So obviously today is how we all behave as consumers, and we really are all consumers. I think often people get caught up in the retail connotations of being a consumer, but actually we are all consuming the Earth's resources. And that for me is the basic start point. And there is an urgency, as we all know, about moving away from fossil fuels, securing energy supplies and cutting carbon emissions. And that has never been clearer. And I don't want to scare anybody. This is not the talk for that. We already know the facts, I'm sure you are all aware. But we know that human behaviour and the rate of consumption and the rate that we're consuming those resources, which are becoming more and more scarce, that has to change in order to sustain livable conditions on the planet. And whether you're a parent or not, I think we all have a responsibility and a duty to try and do a little bit better in our day, in our daily lives, in order to preserve the planet for future generations. So we're going to talk about better business practice, particularly because it starts as a two-way street, I believe. It's both up to businesses and consumers to ask questions of those businesses, whether it's the shops that you shop at or the suppliers that you buy your energy from or the cars that you drive. It's a two-way street, and I'm sure you all agree. There's no perfect solution, there's no perfect brand, there's no perfect individual. We're not striving for perfection, we're striving to improve in a significant way. And that's, again, what I don't think it's about scaremongering. I think it's about stating the stark facts, but climate anxiety is a real thing, isn't it? Especially in the younger generations. So for me, when I write, for instance, it's a tightrope effect. You don't want to, if I preach, I lose the audience and they walk straight back into Zara and shop. If I slowly entice and hook and encourage and nurture the idea of gentle change and ways of improving our behaviour, hopefully you hook people in a bit better, for longer anyway. What is your clearest definition of sustainability? And could you explain your role that you're not playing, that you are contributing to, in terms of the business that you run, SidConnects, to how we operate better? So there's two questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, the real definition of sustainability, we touch on this an awful lot because Akhil did a master's quite recently. We have the academic definition at the tip of our tongues, which is sustainability is
meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations to meet their own needs. So that's the UN academic version of sustainability.
And then my version, which is a bit more everyday, it is about our species surviving on the planet. It's about us. So that's why sustainability, as you know, this kind of catch-all word, actually sits on three pillars. Environment, obviously, but also society and economy. So sustainability, that phrase, that word, is about changing the system by which we live. Because ultimately, the planet will recover itself one day. The question is, are we going to be here to see it? And how many species are we going to take with us when we go down? So that's the real definition of sustainability. It's about systems change. And the second question was about how we...
How do you personally, I mean, you describe yourself as an activist, so I'm genuinely intrigued. What does that look like not in a nutshell, I don't want to
No, but what I've got my prop. Okay. So when I do activism work, like me and my friends who, we do all these like talks, closed talks, and we go into school and we talk about the environmental impact of fast fashion. And I make this is what I call the true cost tag. So it's a bit, there's a sort of arrow there and it's pointing to the ground, but usually I would have a massive pile of clothing there, like up to the waist. And it says we throw away this much clothing every 2.5 seconds. Someone's going to show it. Thank you. So it basically has all these stats, right? So what I'd say to people, and especially students when I go into school, is imagine that this is hanging off the product that you're going to buy in the shop. It's not just money, okay? This is what those three pillars look like. It's called the triple bottom line. So something is costing you, maybe that t-shirt in Zara, $6.99, okay? It is also costing you 3 years worth of drinking water. it is costing human dignity. Yeah, it has all of these ripple effects. This is the actual cost. And that's what I'm about when I do activism, and actually even in the day job. Like, we are looking at all of the ripples, we're looking at all of the stakeholders, and we're trying to talk about this true cost, which is also called the triple bottom line, and really for me that's what sustainability is.
Akhil, when we met, we all had a Zoom back in the summer to meet each other, and Akhil described himself as originally the least sustainable person. And whereas now you're fully ensconced in a business drive, Earth 51, that really puts profit, people and planet, or aims to put them on an even keel in terms of business acumen as well. What was the catalyst for that change in direction?
Yeah, I think I regret saying I was the least sustainable.
It's on camera now.
Yeah, you know, when you say stuff and then you're like, oh, that came out wrong. But it's kind of true, because my wife will attest to it, that I never really understood sustainability. I used to be in the technology field. I was a greedy seller trying to sell more. And every day I woke up trying to differentiate myself, saying, how do I actually sell more? And I happened to be working with a bunch of Swedish and Nordic brands, IKEAs, etc. And they were very focused on technology for good. This was back in 2016, 2017. And at that stage, I realized that I could actually sell them tech for good. So it went in with the wrong, there wasn't the right reason why I got into it. But the more I got into that space, I realized that this is actually good for everybody. Companies that are trying to embrace technology, which is a big conversation, they can do it in the right way. And at the same time, I was working in a cybersecurity firm where only 5% of the population force was women, which got me. Because I remember my orientation program, we had the head of HR standing in front, and he said, any questions? And I said, yeah, where are the women? There are just no women in this room. We had a room like this and 108 people or something, and there must have been 8 women. And if we talk about technology and cybersecurity and all these industries being cutting edge, innovation for the future, and I was thinking about my daughter at home, saying she's never going to stand a chance. So all those things culminated in me trying to do more stuff around women in leadership, making sure if they pushed me on a stage, I took a lady with me.
It worked.
So here's the other way around, which is great. But sadly, in technology fields, you find men standing, session after session after session, and that's a problem. So I tried to do my little, and that evolved into an idea where I talked myself out of a job, and because I was supposed to be selling technology, and I started selling sustainability. But I realized there's a massive audience for it in the private sector. Went looking for a job in that space, and everyone said, now you can come in and talk about technology, that's cool. We'll never monetize sustainability is what I was asked, what I was told. And that made me to think about getting into carbon, perhaps, or climate change. And then I realized that, to Mica's point, that's one part of many pieces. The whole piece has to come together in systems change, and that's why we created Earth 51 as an advisory that goes into multiple spaces. So I landed in that, and I think there's a lot of pushback against people saying, oh, this is right and this is wrong. But I actually think the people who you think are doing wrong are not educated, including myself. Once you educate somebody, they do something wonderful with it. They connect the dots. So education is a big area for us. We spend a lot of our time, 70% of our time, educating businesses now. And I think that's working well. Every single one of them changes. It's just a case of giving them an opportunity to do that. So, sorry, that's my long-winded way. I went from non-sustainable to trying to do something.
Are you allowed to share? What does your client roster look like?
Yeah, sure. We started in CPG, FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, people who sell soaps and shampoos, etc. The usual suspects, and then from there we dabbled a bit with fashion and clothing, which is a big concern area, and then finally technology picked it up. So 70% of our client list now is technology giants who have a lot of money to spend and are trying to jump on the bandwagon a little bit late, citing technology for good. And I think that's helped us in a way. And I feel that they're like children. You got to educate them in a way that works for them, and you speak their language. Mm-hmm. And without realizing, they change and they have good behavior. So that's a little bit about how we're trying to do it. A lot of technology, some FMCG, and government. We work a lot with government as well, not in the UK. We're trying to change that.
Maybe, I mean, that's a whole other topic. Leanne, you too shifted your day-to-day business to create an actual product in the Happy Larder, and that it does better and it educates the consumer. Tell us more about the brand and where were you before that?
So my background is fashion and technology and media and that kind of all culminated in a year we spent living and working in Silicon Valley and just, big tech, huge amounts of money, everything. And I just kind of sat there one day thinking, there's so much help out there for people because my focus is women getting ahead in the workforce, women getting into leadership, and actually where is the help for all the women who don't even have a foot in the door? So when we came back here, I started working on the concept of Happy Larder. It didn't have a name or a product then, but I wanted to create a business that would become a revenue stream for working with charities helping females, particularly in domestic abuse and human trafficking, two areas that their freedom and human rights are completely taken away. And so through exploring lots of different products and ideas, I kind of sitting one day at a cafe drinking tea, thought I'm not a coffee drinker. What about tea? And the more I looked into tea, the more I realised that it is, tea, coffee, chocolate, 3 worst products in the world for modern day slavery. There's a lot of human rights abuses. It is the second most consumed beverage in the UK behind water, which I think is just in the tea anyway. And so it was a product that actually there's a huge amount drunk every single day and not enough thought goes into the tea bag that ends up in and not just a tea bag, it's a string, it's a little piece of paper. And what we drink most days is actually quite an inferior product that's just, labelled up and sold cheaply in supermarkets, when actually, like fashion, there is a real human cost to making cheap products, whatever they are. And we buy them cheaper in the supermarket or in the shops, but the people paying the ultimate price are the farmers or the people manufacturing these goods in developing countries. And it's a really challenging one because as consumers, we want cheaper products, but the cost of that, the cost of us having more money to spend on more products is someone else, in most cases, paying with their life or their health. So that for me became a very easy product because it's an everyday product that most people don't think twice about when they drink. But it formed this 360 model for my business of being able to help women all through the cycle of the business. And also, I only sell loose leaf tea and I only sell loose leaf tea wares. So everything is reusable. And at the end of the day, you just throw the leaves on your gardener's compost. So it's a really simple, easy, everyday product that is so easy to make a switch. Yeah.
So much.
Yeah.
And I know you use the Good Life Hub as well in terms of your charitable efforts.
Yeah, so I opened this space, it opened post-COVID, but it was a business idea I'd worked on pre-COVID because quite frankly I was sick of working from home on my own, as we've now all experienced. And this space is all about trying to bring communities together, but it's now given me a physical space. So we do weekend retreats here for mums and kids from the refuges. We do staff days, away days, again for women, domestic abuse charities. We do a whole bunch of stuff here. So yeah, it's quite rewarding.
Very rewarding. No, that was when we met. I was really touched by that. I think we need to talk about it more. It's still a taboo subject.
Yeah.
The charity that's the work that's required in this county.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important. And actually, finally, you obviously touched on it, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here today.
So my background was in the beauty industry, where again, I just had that kind of realization after a while. I was like, hold on, what am I doing? I'm convincing all these women to buy beauty, making them feel rubbish to buy beauty products they don't need.
And that's quite a key point. I think it's all there's been a negative story. You need the eye cream, you need the cream that's going to make you look awake all day or whatever it is. You play on a negative message.
And so much, these big businesses put a huge amount of investment and resource and time into their marketing teams to get you to buy things that you don't need. And when you're on the other side, you're going, hold on, I'm convincing women to do this. And it kind of, it's a slippery slope. You know, I was 20 when I got my first job at L'Oreal, and I thought, like, this is amazing. And I was working in the PR team, that's why I'm Ginnie, public relations. And back then, sustainability was called corporate social responsibility. And it was the hot potato that no one wanted to touch. And it sat with the most junior department, kind of the marketing team, and the most junior person in the marketing team, which was me as PR assistant. And Mica was a sustainability activist and my cousin. And so she was like, ooh, you know, they're saying this product hasn't been tested on animals, but have you checked it out? Because if you look at the supply chain, all the ingredients have been, and then they're mixing it together and saying not tested on animals. Do you think that's okay? And so I would go back into L'Oreal and say, hold on, this doesn't feel right to me. And you know, it's not very good for your career when you're 20, challenging the big guys on that. So I kept going and I climbed the ranks of the beauty industry. And it just kind of got me thinking, like, what is the purpose of a business? Is the purpose of a business to make as much money as possible for its shareholders? Or is the purpose of a business to do something like what you're doing? Do you know what I mean? To make money, and then also for that money to get funneled into the societal problems that we have, like domestic abuse, like human trafficking. Like, surely there's enough money to go around so that we can grow the economy and get money into the places that need it, instead of all of the money just sitting at the top.
I agree. I know it's a cultural shift. I know it seems, and to a lot of men that I've talked to, friends actually who work in investment banking, they've said to me, until someone makes money from it, no one's interested. And I think that is where we hope there will be those that, you know,
Well, until we
prove
can,
a point.
until we can
Prove it's
drink
not-
money,
Yeah.
until we can breathe money, like, then
I know.
the kids aren't going to care. Like, that's
They
what
don't.
everyone's going to have to get on
It-
board with.
It is baffling. It's the idea of maybe we just have enough as it is of everything. So it's a change
We
in
have more
mindset.
than enough. We have
have more
too much. Of
Oh, I
everything.
agree, but we need to learn that
We're
we have that.
drowning in our stuff.
know.
Like, so yeah. Sorry, off
No. So I'm going to carry on. We're going to talk about the B2B journey. So first question, Mica, set the scene. When you first meet a client, they come to you. What is the standard opener that you get from them? Is it panic? Is it an urgency? You know, for the sake of ticking a box? Is it just tell us what we have to do and we'll do it? Are they nervous about the cost of the change that's required? Is there a genuine willingness?
A little bit of all of that. I mean, for the most part, I think a lot of businesses just don't know where to start. And a lot of businesses feel straight away worried that they're not going to be doing enough, or that they're going to kind of come up short. And they're often defensive or apologetic. We make a really big deal about not judging. And Aisling and Jen are particularly good at not judging and you know, taking the business very gently through this process. I'm a little pushier. but actually what happens is once they step onto that treadmill, it just all kind of happens because it starts to feel really good. It starts to make sense. And this idea that, you know, they somehow have to let go of money and profit in order to get sustainability in the door, that dissipates. And then we can really start kind of making traction. So yeah, there is a lot of fear around that. I think people do think, right, let's get some budget and throw it at sustainability, so we can tick that box and move on. But like, and what Aisling always says is, you know what, that's fine. If you've done the opposite of sustainability all your life and you wake up tomorrow morning and you just want to do one thing and you want to do it for whatever reason, just do it. You know, like Akhil said, he started working in sustainability to sell stuff to, you know, to make a living, not necessarily because he was an eco-warrior. But you just get it. Like once you start, you'll get it and it will just fall into place. And then it's not scary, it's the opposite. It's very uplifting, it's very inspiring. It sort of opens up businesses to feel really positive about their purpose, like why they exist.
Is your job to crack the whip? Is your job to handhold? What's the dynamic of a relationship with your clients?
Yeah, well,
Because they're all trying to get B Corp. Is that my understanding? Is that correct?
most of them, I mean, a
We'll
lot of
come to B Corp later.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Some of our clients are already doing a lot of really good sustainable work, and they struggle with communicating that.
Okay.
And so they come to us for that too, because we all come from a PR, marketing, branding backgrounds. So that's another layer that we add on. And for B Corp, a lot of businesses, they just want it, and they don't quite know what to expect, and it's a lot.
Yes.
Because you can just go to the B Corp website and you can start your own account and just start doing it. And that's totally free and it's very accessible. But if you're a business of some size, it asks a lot of you. And there are just some questions that people can't quite work out. And also you have to attain a certain number of points.
Yeah.
And so they come to us for help navigating that, and also how do we get the points, which is basically them asking, how do we do better?
And who are your clients, that if you're allowed to share with us? Are they coming from a particular sector, or you work with anybody, or you've seen more coming from a particular area?
Well, because the girls have a background in beauty, so it's quite a number of our clients are in beauty because they know that the whole entire background and their supply chain issues and all of that can be really thoroughly understood by Akhil and Jen. But no, we have clients across all sectors: finance, tech, clothing, like everything you can think of. It's definitely not exclusive to sector.
Okay, so if anybody's interested, chat to them at the end. Akhil, I wanted to touch upon your focus of empowering women, because obviously when you go into a big private company, I'm guessing there are a lot of men in the room. How does that message come across when you're trying to convince them about, empowering more women to be in positions of authority within that company in order to basically do better financially and socially? And you're a man saying, how does it? I'm intrigued.
I think it's two things. So I'm not saying this because this is my opinion. I'm saying this because I've been laughed at by senior men all in a room saying, what do you want to do? Drive a women in leadership program? Why would we do that? So I've come from there. I've seen that, been laughed at, and then actually gone below the radar with HR and actually run women in leadership programs in rooms like this on the quiet. So it's been that bad to where people pick it up and say, actually, that was a good idea, let's go do it. Okay. So our little incubation sessions with women in leadership started that way. But I think the world has changed a lot in the last 2 years. I think there are two things. There are undercurrents where things have to change, and I don't think men understand the challenges that women have. Women have it so much tougher in every which way, from childhood all the way to confidence, to getting hired, through to whichever career they choose, to climbing a leadership ladder it's just asking too much sometimes. It's just very difficult. I think men have to be sensitized to that. That's number one. And when you start talking to them about it, it takes a lot of, you've got to keep doing it back and forth. What we've tried to do is, that's one route, we keep banging your head against men starting to believe it. Mm-hmm. Second route is try and find women champions inside of companies and try and find women leaders. And I was speaking to Ginnie about it the other day. I think it's okay to say, oh, there's a woman leader. But the pressures she goes through is tremendous. It's much more than a man. They have imposter syndromes. They say, am I good enough to do my job? Someone's promoting them. They're like, oh, what will everyone think about it? Someone's asked if they have to ask for a raise, they think 10 times about it. They're usually in a room full of men and they think 4 times before they have to ask the question in that room. So it's very difficult for them. And we want to try and help those women in leadership positions with the tools that they need to differentiate themselves and use these tools to rise through the corporate ladder. And as you go through, make sure you get more women with you, and you start to spread that, not love, but that leadership positions across your board. So things like that is where we can help them. And they stand out, and leadership is being pressured. Their chairman and the boards are all pressurizing women to, pressurizing the CEO downward, saying, you got to do more in this space. And when you have a lady come in as a leader saying, I can do this, they're like, whoa, okay, yeah, here you go. And when she does great for the business, she does well for herself. And then so this is the way we've been trying to do it. I also feel more men need to stand up and talk about it, because I feel that it is really interesting, but
in some of these sustainability, or you mean
no, about women, female empowerment and gender equity and gender parity, more men need to do it, because when women do it, men have an attitude of here's someone whining about it or not really doing it. But I think when men stand up and talk about, hey, 50% of the world is made up of women, like one here, one there. 50% of this room, imagine that's women and that's men. Yeah. But in business, sorry, we'll only pick a few from you out here. That makes no sense. And in a terrible analogy, where imagine an aircraft flying on 4 engines, you're not using all 4 engines to get across the Atlantic, for instance. Right? Why would you shut off 2 engines? Yeah. It makes no sense. So you need the combined power of women to hit whatever challenges we have in the future. So that's the mantra that we use, saying if you're not using all your engine power, or you're not using all all your employees, and you need to be hiding better. And I'll just finish. I know I'm rambling a bit.
No, you're not rambling. It always feels like that when you're talking. Trust me, I always feel I'm rambling.
The last piece I feel is that women should not be apologetic about doing well, being promoted, and that's a problem. I feel that, so especially with now we've had Black Lives Matter over the last year, and now we're talking about diversity. In fact, more than sustainability, every corporate is setting up a D&I arm, the diversity and inclusion arm, and there's budget for that. So now everyone wants to tick the boxes. How many people am I hiring? Okay, I've got 3 men, but I need 3 women as well. You know, they're doing blind CVs and recruitment, etc., gender-sensitive recruitment. I think that's so important now. And any women who are going in for these roles should never be like, oh, am I being hired because I'm a woman? And I tell my wife that. I said, you've been discriminated all your life. It's okay. You know, seriously, it's okay. Do not now shy away from that opportunity if you're getting it as well. So it's really interesting how women need to just cross that imposter syndrome and just keep going now. And you're getting help to, or at least companies have become conscious of equity. Mm-hmm. Now don't shy away from it. Now go for it. Absolutely. So I do feel that's important.
And Akhil, you've had a big focus on the role of women. And this, sorry, we're getting away from the topic, but really it comes back to the fact that businesses put their consumers first. If you're really going to make headway, we've got to get back to what consumers are looking for in the brands that they invest in, that they spend with, and that they use on a daily basis. So that's where we're going with this. But I know that you've had a big focus. I watched your TED talk on YouTube. It was brilliant and really insightful. But you focus on the fact that it's not a gender thing. It's actually it's a kind of the way we think, isn't it? That means that men and women really do better when they work together.
And it's a way of thinking. So in 2018, I was working for a big tech company actually, and my boss was at Cambridge, so she would lecture at Cambridge. And at that time in the UK, there was more CEOs called Peter than female CEOs in the top FTSE companies. Like, isn't that crazy? And I was with her and I was like, gosh, is that stat correct? It is. So in 2018, there was more CEOs called Peter than female CEOs, and it hasn't changed that much since then, right? So a few Peters have resigned, 1 or 2 more women are CEOs, but it's still a huge gap. And there was an amazing professor at Cambridge, and she explained to me, so again, if we go back to the definition of sustainability, meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations to meet their own needs. It means thinking long term. And I don't have children, but it means thinking of your children, right? So as women, collectively, that's what we do. We think longer term. We don't think like of instant profits. And it's all around that shift in thinking. And that's why it's not just about having more women at the table. It's about having that change in thinking. And so Cambridge were really coming under pressure because all the businesses had to report on their gender pay gap, right? And there was this Peter problem, it was all over the media. But to your point, Akhil, they couldn't get enough women into the CEO roles. So
they just didn't exist in the company at all.
Did you know what? The top companies were like, we want more women in these roles. but women weren't applying for them. So then they were going to Cambridge saying, where's this pipeline? And Cambridge couldn't get enough women to apply for the MBA programs to train them up to then become a CEO. So they started something called the Rising Women Leaders Program, and I was lucky enough to get a scholarship onto that. I was diagnosed with dyslexia and they gave me the scholarship. And in that I learned all about imposter syndrome. I learned that women couldn't open bank accounts in 1975 in their own name, right? And this is all the hang-ups of these. So it was about every time you are fearful of getting up to do a panel, or fearful of walking into a room, or fearful of giving a presentation, know that it's all this unconscious bias that you've had your whole life, all this conditioning you've had your whole life, and you need to get over those fears. There were all these women who went ahead of us who had to bang down the door, and now the door is open, and it's just about getting over your imposter syndrome, your fears, and walking through the door, because businesses want it, and also the planet depends on it, right? And also you need to be able to see it to be it. So you have to role model these behaviours for your children as well, which is what you're doing for your daughter, I guess too. So it's really important work. Do you know what I mean? It's really key. It's not just a quota thing. Exactly. It's so much more. It's a different point of view.
But I still think women feel, it's just I got it. And my friend is a CEO of an oil company, and she's got it because she says she's got it because she's a woman. I'm like, you're so switched on. You're the most intelligent woman I know, and she's the breadwinner. She earns far more than her husband. He works in law. It's obvious. She's not just got it because she's a woman, but she feels it, and she is in that position. I just think it hits everybody, no matter what stage of life you're at. Let's move on to what drives us to make a purchase decision. Because Leanne, I want to ask you, you've obviously created a product that is being sold directly to consumers and supporting charitable efforts at the same time. No brand is perfect, of course, but do you think smaller companies have an easier job or a harder job in building their green and ethical credentials?
I think both. I think from changing internal processes is easier if you're a small business. You're a lot more agile.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through layers and layers and layers of approval processes, and you don't have to worry about the shareholders' profits in order to make a change that's necessary. I think consumers hold small businesses to a higher account than they hold big businesses.
I agree.
And they expect a lot more from you. And yet they'll turn around and equally buy a product from one of the big companies because it's their favourite chocolate or their favourite drink or whatever it may be, without thinking or without holding that business to account in the way that they do the small businesses.
So our values shift according to
Absolutely. Our values shift depending on whether we want that particular product.
or how much money's in our pocket or bank account. I also think there's so much focus on this idea of kitchen table startups, whether it's Natalie Massenet at Net-a-Porter. This idea of, I love that it's a kitchen table. That, of course it is. It's a woman at a kitchen table. Might as well be at the kitchen sink. And so we picture it more, and we picture that moment that a business is born, and therefore we kind of buy into that story. But then we can shift instantly if there's an offer on buy one get one free, and something totally that doesn't share those qualities.
And the easy shipping, like convenience, that kind of thing. We're so used to getting things straight away.
That's my bugbear actually. The free returns and the people buying 20 items knowing that they probably only want to keep one, because that's where companies make such a loss, huge amounts of money, the ASOS's, Net-a-Porter's, wherever it is that you shop. But it's also throwaway culture in at its best, because a lot isn't returned because people can't be bothered to print out the returns label. And so it's just, from my perspective, that's when qualities go out the window, but you might be a vegan who really demands the most from your local supermarket, or it's just keeping our qualities, I think, more in check, and our values, sorry. Ashley, I wanted to ask you, and I came up with this last night and quickly asked if I could ask it of her. But imagine if you were still at Clarins or Larder, but your role was head of best practice or head of better practice. Do you envisage what you would aim to do in that role? And can you imagine how it would be received by those that you used to work for, who are probably still there, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So from an academic perspective, they say what's going to kind of save us from a business perspective is sustainability entrepreneurs. So like you, someone who is setting up a business who's going to grow the economy without exploiting people and planet, but also sustainability entrepreneurs. So people who work in big organisations who are the one making the change internally, because the CEOs at the top are already on this journey. So the majority of CEOs really know that they have to sort this out because they know otherwise businesses aren't going to be around in the future. So they already big listed companies have to have an ESG, environmental, social and governance framework. It's the law. The government's committed to net zero by 2050. So CEOs are up for it. Their investors are putting them under pressure. But it's making that change within the business, which is really tough.
Can I just ask, is that one of the few legal obligations that businesses have? They have the ESG element?
It depends. Yeah, it depends. So if it depends on legally what country you're operating in. So for example, here we've committed to net zero by 2050.
So it is a legal obligation?
It's a legal obligation.
Okay.
So businesses have to legally report on it. If you have over 250 employees,
Right.
by law you have to report on your gender pay gap. Since that came up, right? So it depends on the size of your business, what the countries you're operating in. So it's coming. It's like the pensions, you know. All the big players have to do the pensions first, and it's coming through. So it's going to happen. So CEOs are up for it, but making change within organisations is really, really challenging, and that's why sustainability entrepreneurs, people within the business who care, upskilling themselves, creating a sustainability task force, presenting that to the leadership team is really what's going to drive big change as well. So that's what I'd say. Anyone who works in big business or whose family do, say, download the B Corp impact assessment or your framework and build together a task force and then, see what happens, because you can make change.
Okay, so let's move on to the confusion that exists as consumers. And the term is called greenwashing, and it's ultimately claiming to do better with your product than you really are doing in terms of its environmental impact. Mica, I know you will absolutely correct me on that, but I just wanted to quickly touch upon a really obvious example that I've certainly come across is the big fashion retail giant H&M, currently facing a lawsuit against major greenwashing, where they claimed an item of clothing used 20% less water under the guise of conscious collection. That was the title of their sub-brand. And after looking into it, the product used 20% more water. So it was a clear misguidance, but guess how much money they probably made from people buying into the fact that they thought they were doing better with their purchase power. So I just want to sort of touch upon what is greenwashing and ways to navigate it that you can apply to your own business. Again, no one's perfect, but also as a consumer, how do you kind of look out for the key, signs that someone might be claiming something that isn't true? And Mica, can you now give a definition of greenwashing? And also, what's been your most shocking experience of greenwashing, either from a client, a potential client, or in your own personal life?
Oh, definitely. I mean, for me personally, the most shocking greenwashing moment was around the Rana Plaza collapse. So I know you will know all about this, but for those who don't, in 2013, a big building in Bangladesh that housed a number of clothing factories and other retail units collapsed and killed well over 1,000 people and injured and maimed many others, and it was horrendous. I mean, and it made headline news when, like, a lot of us in that industry and in kind of green fashion, like, we know that happens all the time, but this was a big one, and it hit the news big time, and everyone was up in arms and freaked out, and all of these big clothing brands said, never heard of any of the factories in the Rana Plaza building, that has nothing to do with us. And then in the news footage, you could see the labels in the rubble, clearing the rubble away, trying to pull dead bodies out of the rubble, and there's like a Benetton tag, and Benetton is still trying to say, don't do it with me. And I was so shocked by that sort of willful letting go of your supply chain and being like, we don't need to know what happens beyond that middleman. We just deal with this person, and then somehow the clothes get made. That's not good enough. That actually is greenwashing. You need to know who's making your clothes. And from that moment on, I started making a massive pest of myself. Every time I went into a shop, I would say to it, it's just some poor young person trying to sell clothes. But I'm like, who made this? Who made this garment? I want to know their name. I want to know where they are. And I didn't care if I was like crazy and totally embarrassing my daughter. I just thought possibly that young sales assistant is going to go to their manager and be like, oh my God, this crazy lady. And then the manager will be like, oh, we have to do something about the crazies. They're all coming in. We need answers to these questions. And maybe my crazy questions went up. I don't know, I'm hoping. But that to me was such a shocking moment. And that's when I realized greenwashing, it's not just about lying. You know, Aisling said earlier, like a lot of beauty brands can say that they don't test on animals because that product itself isn't tested on animals, but that doesn't mean that ingredients weren't tested on animals. So that, you know, all of this kind of very misleading, purposely misleading stuff, and there are just outright lies out there, but also, just to me, greenwashing is also just willful ignorance.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not good enough. So that was my kind of big watershed moment.
And are there any brands that you trust 100%? And any that you really won't go near that we might be surprised by?
Well, I mean, actually, yeah. So after Rana Plaza and after just, you know, learning so much about where our clothes come from and how environmentally damaging it is and how unfair the supply chain is and how little the people who actually do that sewing of our garments get paid, my feet just wouldn't take me into shops.
Yeah.
I remember standing outside of the French Connection or wherever, thinking, oh, I just want to go in and just see. I'm not going to buy anything. And my feet were like, nope, not going in. And I just stood there and I was like, oh, okay. I just don't like it. I just don't like that atmosphere. And also what I don't like, and we touched on this a little bit, is just the psychology of shopping. You know, I have a teenage daughter and I hate watching her go into a shop, and while she's in the shop, like, her self-esteem starts to plummet. I'm like, hang on a minute, you woke up perfectly happy. Like, what? And now you're like, oh, I need to buy something to feel better about myself. Like, no, you don't.
Filling a void.
Yeah. Retail therapy is not a thing. That's made up. Not true.
No.
So I don't like any of that. I tend to avoid big brands, and it turns out I haven't missed anything. I spent years not buying anything on the high street. I'm fine. I still have more clothes in my closet that I can fit. So I love charity shops. I love buying local. I love knowing where my money is going. There are the brands that I know. I mean, I think we're, with social media as well, and after COVID, we're really moving into a place where marketing and brand consumer relationship is all about having a conversation and getting to know people, and it's just much more than the product.
Yeah.
So I very much believe in that true cost tag. So when I pay for something, I think, right, I'm paying this amount of money, but, you know, I'm also sort of knowing about the planet and the people who made it and all of that. So I am you can sell me something by giving me information, I will soak that up.
Yeah.
So that's my thing.
It really is the ingredients, that's what I mean. And like you said, the ingredients, I don't mean just the fabric, the ingredients of that product. Like, we have the colour wheel to understand the ingredients of our food. I really think we're heading in a direction that should be the next way for consumers to understand what on earth it is they're buying into, because it is very confusing, and I think it's overwhelming. And then, like I said at the beginning, it's a tightrope effect. too much information and people are overwhelmed and they just go back to bad habits. But slowly enticing and encouraging and hoping that people will want to learn about their clothes, let's just say.
Yeah, exactly. And also just, like Aisling kind of pointed out some of these, small businesses here, it's such a nice way of buying something. You go and talk to someone and they'll tell you about the product and how they made it and what's in it, and you get to actually see this person who started a business that they believe in, and the whole thing is just quite joyful. Whereas like, in the supermarket, sometimes I'm just like, oh, but it's like the opposite joy.
Yeah, but it's so true. It's like this Christmas, are you going to buy a Jo Malone candle for your friends for Christmas? Which is, Jo Malone isn't involved in that brand. It's sold to Estee Lauder Companies, which is a big listed company. Or are you going to buy some beautiful candles made by a woman called Georgia, who I spoke to outside, who's like made them upstairs and like has put so much love and care into it. And that's the whole thing. It's like, where do you want your money to go? To someone at Estee Lauder Companies in New York who's pretending a brand is owned by a woman called Jo Malone, or actual Georgia's who's actually way more beautiful.
I've got her candles, they're fabulous.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. Leanne, you've got a product on the market. Is it easy to get away with claims? Like, how fastidious did you have to be with whatever labelling or not claims but certifications you used? And also, I want you to mention the use of plastic, because sometimes it's not always the enemy, is it?
I don't have any of the certification that I would like, not because I don't comply with it, because it's very expensive. And as a small business, I can put my revenue back into growing the business and to helping the women, or I can buy a logo. And one day the point will be to get to that. But there's even greenwashing around stuff like that. Like tea, people don't really think of fair trade as much in terms of tea as they do in coffee. But the fair trade certification, for example, it doesn't necessarily pay a living wage, it just pays more. So if you and I have tea farms and you can afford to be certified fair trade and I can't, you will get more business, but we may pay our staff the same. And then I'll start to lose business just because I don't have the certification. So where I source my tea from is through an importer who works with tea farms around the world to teach them how to pay a living wage to their staff. Because fair trade's not a living wage, it just means they're getting marginally more than the non-fair trade down the road. Rainforest Alliance, far more stringent. B Corp, more stringent. So there's a lot of things that we as consumers don't understand, and therefore will choose one product over another because we think we're doing the right thing. When actually we're not doing the wrong thing, it's just not quite as good as they make out it to be. So that's the reason why I don't have any of those certifications yet. But I spent 2 years working on my business, trying to do everything right. I can't even tell you the amount of time I spent researching just packaging. Because I knew for me, and I think this is where it goes back to this whole theme of connecting the dots, is if we don't think about where our product is from, what it does to the people involved, to the planet, we are all part of everything that we buy and everything that's made. We talk about women. Mother Earth is the most crucified woman of all, right? Like, we are killing her. So if we don't think about all of these components, then what is the point in making a product or putting it out there? We go back to corporate social responsibility, and so many of these companies go, hey, look at the good I'm doing while I'm doing all this over here, but I'm distracting you with something good. And I fundamentally believe that we absolutely can make money. We might not make as much money from shareholders, which is why I love the B Corp, because it's not about doing harm to the planet if it means not returning a profit to the shareholders. We have the ability to redo the way we do business. In fact, it's actually crucial. And women are a huge part of that. There's a Chinese proverb that says women hold up half the sky, and it is true. If you look at the developing world where we grow a lot of our products, where we make a lot of our products, when we employ women, when we empower them to earn the money, they're the ones that invest the money in health, education, home and their families. The men spend their money on themselves first, the women spend it on their families. And so the only way out of the mess that we've got ourselves into, and some of that's intentional, some of it's not. Every, social media was a great way of connecting with families, and yet look at the downside to it. A lot of the downside of the things that we see now, we couldn't see when they first started, right? But I think as we become smarter, it is our obligation to do something about it. Anyway, that's
no, but we'll come on to it in a minute. But actually, the main thing is that any business that strives to do better now is only going to be more resilient than its competitors. That's absolutely true.
And a quick answer to your question on packaging, because I think packaging is really important. I spent a long time researching packaging, and in the end had to go with the best option I could, which is a recyclable plastic. I won't bore you with all the ins and outs of packaging and what's recyclable and what's not, and the resources that go into making glass to then go into recycling it. There's a whole bunch of different stuff. I think the two areas that we consume the most amount of packaging is our kitchens and our bathrooms. So, and we look for ways that we can minimise the amount of packaging there, which is really important. When you're talking about food, there is greenwash around degradable, because if it's not biodegradable, it's not good for the earth. There's degradable, there's omnidegradable. All it means is it's going to break down into tiny bits of plastic in the earth, right? And even compostable, the amount of compostable packaging that actually gets composted is a couple of percent. It's insane, because each different one requires different conditions in which it requires, and they have to be under big commercial composting. There's very few in the country. So while we have certain things that are today's best option, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now, they'll be different. And I think businesses have to be able to adapt and just do the best they can now, which will be different in 6, 12 months, 2 years. But in terms of food, the tea is a perfect example. Tea has a 2-year shelf life. Compostable packaging at the most has 18 months, some has 6 months. That is from the moment it is produced. So it's produced, it's sitting on the producer's shelf, it goes to the reseller, sits on their shelf, goes to our shelf, sits on there for a while, gets out. So what's happening is packaging, they're having to put use by dates on products that coincide with the packaging, not the food inside. So what happens is the packaging then is, my product is out of date, in the bin it goes. And that's not always the case. So for me, I spent so much time trying to work on my packaging. I think I've had 2 people ask me about it.
Really?
I mean, no one's cared. But I care. And for me, I had to make sure that every part of my business was something I cared about and could stand up and say, hand on heart, I'm doing the best I can at this point in time. I wish more businesses would do that.
That's all it is. It's about doing the best you can, because I know Akhil, I'm sure you are aware of it, but the flip side to greenwashing is known as the green hush, where brands just are too scared to say anything at all for fear of a backlash because they haven't ticked all the boxes. Do you ever advise clients on how to handle that? It's really about communicating sort of clearly.
Yeah, I think coming back to what you said right in the beginning, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And while listening to you just now, I was just thinking of the healthcare industry. I was speaking to my mum this morning, and we were just talking about disease and how her generations have sadly passed on and through disease that no one understood. But like we've had advances in healthcare, now you understand cancer, diabetes, a better life. In much the same way, I think sustainability will evolve, where we'll understand this industry a lot better. And like you said, what's nice, what is good now, or best practice now, will be different in 6 months, 18 months, etc. Coming back to green hush, I feel that companies and everyone inside these large or small organizations as well are very nervous about sustainability because no one really understands it. So all of a sudden they're being asked to come up and tell their story, and they're like, whoa, I'm not going into that space. And then they hear about the backlash and they're like, definitely not going there. That's a PR disaster. So it's up to us to give these companies confidence, saying, look, nobody's perfect. I was waiting for the answer for, when you asked Mica, I said, which company is perfect out there? And I was waiting to see, and there's no one perfect out there. At some point, at this moment in time, and if someone is perfect until now, it will change tomorrow. So everything is, it's a global supply chain today. Anything can go wrong anywhere at any point in time. So we keep explaining to companies that you need to show progress. If you're at point A, what is point B? Show a delta every time. If you did well this year, try to improve it next year. So keep progressing and change quickly. And I liked what Mica had said. He said, we will not be around, but the planet will definitely be there. So we're actually not destroying the planet, we're destroying our own species. I love the way she was saying that. I was with my kids at the National History Museum and there's this clock. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a clock which says, imagine from the time Earth was started, the Earth, the Big Bang, all the way to now, if that was a 24-hour clock, how long have humans spent on the planet? And it was fascinating because the amount of time we spend on the planet on a 24-hour clock is just that much. That's it. It's less than it's a split of a second. So we're gonna be extinct ourselves if we don't change the way we operate. So that really resonated with me, and I think companies are trying to change. They are trying to shift. I don't think the problem is I don't think scaremongering will help. I think it's about everyone getting together. Businesses like ours coming through and creating the spark and the catalyst to try and drive companies to just be better. So I'm very hesitant to judge. I love the fact that you don't try and judge, and I think that's important because there's way too much nervousness in the air. I think positive climate, all of us sitting in this room right now, one person left, just looking, and everyone else is still here. I think that matters. And listening to people for 45 minutes is not easy. Yeah. No, but seriously, I think these little collaborations and communities and just educating people, I think is so important.
And schools, that would be my next thing.
Absolutely.
I am going to jump to a few key questions now because I'm conscious of time. We've got about 10 minutes left. Mica, let's touch on B Corp, and then I want to move on to, not war, don't worry, but I want to address current situations globally, and then we'll have a few examples, and then you'll be on your way, I promise. Mica, B Corp, for those who don't know, can you just give us an overview and perhaps explain the kind of key pillars of it?
Yeah, so B Corp is a certification. It's global, and you'll see it on products. And actually, I know that we have the owner of a B Corp company in the audience. She might have a product, so she can show you. She's got her B Corp logo on it, and it's a certification that is like one of the most robust you can get if you're a business. You have to go through it and achieve a certain number of points. And then you have to get assessed, and then you have to make a legal commitment to that triple bottom line that we've been talking about. And so in this country, that means a business has to change their articles of association. So you are legally bound to shift from a shareholder model to a stakeholder model. Stakeholders are everyone involved in your business. So that B Corp assessment covers governance, workers, environment, community, and customers. So everyone and everything, including Mother Earth, including the planet, that is affected by your business operations has to be taken into consideration by the directors when they make business decisions, and you are legally accountable for that. That's the main point behind B Corp. That's why it is a trust mark.
And how long is it valid for?
So if you get your certification, you are certified for 3 years, after which you have to recertify and show improvement. So you have to better your own score after 3 years, and you have to keep gathering and reporting and improving on everything. And it's really interesting because B Corp really pushes a business's purpose. And they are also just for-profit businesses. You can't get that certification if you're a charity or a non-profit. Yeah? This is about businesses becoming a force for good. This is the role that businesses have to play in that whole mind shift, that systems change that we were talking about.
And is it very expensive, or is it adjusted according to...
It's on a sliding scale. So depending on the size of your business, that will sort of basically tell you your fee, and there is as well, you will get a discount if you are anyone other than a white male. You'll get a discount. You're a woman or you're from a marginalised community. So it's really interesting. If you are a business owner, I strongly advise that you go and do a bit of research around it.
And for consumers, there you go. There's at least one, logo that you can now look out for. I know that Waitrose, for instance, will be opening or have already started opening B Corp aisles, where every product will be B Corp registered or certified. So that's the kind of beginning of the shift. That hopefully will become more commonplace and again easier for us as shoppers to
I think you'll
understand.
start to see it more, because actually a lot of businesses do have it but don't bother pushing it front and centre because not enough consumers know about it. But that's very circular, and that's all changing. And a lot of businesses that aren't consumer facing, they want it as well, because they know in the future they're not going to get so much as a business loan.
Who's behind B Corp?
Called B Lab. Aisling knows the whole story.
I know the whole story. So I'm a master in sustainability. It was founded by 3 university friends in 2005. And so they had huge success. 2 of the guys had huge success with a shoe brand called And One, which ended up being sold for huge amounts of money to a listed company. And all of the values that they put into their business at the beginning just went once the business got sold. And it was very heartbreaking for them, right? Because all the people that hired were suddenly getting treated really poorly, the supply chain turned to a nightmare, and they were just like, this is insane. So they were like, there has to be a way of businesses being forced for good. And at the same time, the UN had brought over the top 50 CEOs to the US, and it was the UN Global Compact was created. Where they said that businesses that don't sort their sustainability out won't have a future, and that's when the term ESG was coined, environmental, social and governance, and also the term sustainable development goals. So it was at this kind of big meeting in 2015, so it all kind of happened at the same time. And so B Lab was created, and they were like, we're going to give a free sustainability framework to get businesses on this point system. So just the way you measure your money, you can measure your environmental and your societal points, and it doesn't matter if you're Patagonia or if you're our business, which is 3-4 people. We're all on the same system, and we can all see ourselves improving, basically.
And Aisling knows some of the stats around B Corp, because a lot of businesses use the framework, right?
So the framework, so it's an environmental, social and governance framework. It's one of the best there is. And I checked today, 150,000 businesses use the framework. And of that 150,000 businesses, 5,000 are certified.
Really?
So some just use it as an ESG framework.
Okay, so
it's best.
And of that 5,000, nearly 1,000 are right here in the UK. So it's growing massively here. They've been inundated with applications.
So. We are leading the way. Not leading the way, but I do think we're doing better, so much better, given the size of our territory compared to others. We just got to keep going, and we cross our fingers for whatever political agenda is coming. Not for today's panel. I just want to briefly ask you, Akhil, and then we're going to finish with some examples for you to take away. I hate to say it, but it is quite doom and gloom at the moment. The economy, cost of living crisis, it's coming, right? We're all sort of feeling it, no matter who you are. If you're, on benefits or you have an investment portfolio that's plummeted. Do you find many brands are still persevering with, positive, sustainable social improvements, or is the reality that it slips down the agenda and we sort of, all feel a bit disheartened? I'm ever the optimist, but what are you seeing? You can be as honest as you want.
Perhaps I'm a bit more of a realist, and I see it's not doom and gloom, but it's not the best time right now in the macroeconomic environment. Inflation is at an all-time high. Interest rates are spiking. Even yesterday we went up to 1.75. Stock markets are down. Money is at, it's not easy to get your hands on money if you're a company now.
Yeah.
It's just not great. And so I'm seeing that there are two ways to do this. Some companies started to make changes during the pandemic and have come out with new business models and actually made more money coming out of it as well. Zoom is a great example. So they have enough funds under the table to try and persevere with this.
Yeah.
I think companies that are doing badly, and I'm just taking listed companies because you can easily see their stock prices crash.
Yeah.
They are being a little more careful, and when we talk to them, they are starting to turn around and say, this is not a good quarter, maybe we are being asked to look at budget cuts. I mean, Snap has just laid off 20,000 people. I mean, just layoffs every day. And then you go and ask them, hey, can you invest in sustainability? And
They're telling you to.
right now it's a little bit, it's going to be difficult. So I feel that it's very difficult for any business to keep focusing on sustainability, where it still thinks it's an add-on. It's not part of the bloodstream or the DNA. I think it's very difficult to do that. So once it is part of the DNA, then they won't think about it. But we're not at that stage as yet where it's become part of their DNA. It needs to, I think businesses need more momentum before any macroeconomic hurdles start to say, it doesn't matter, we're going to push through that. I don't think they're there with businesses.
Yeah.
There's a lot of positivity, but no, it's not there.
But it would equate to business resilience if a part of their business acumen remained focused on positive change.
Yeah,
Would that be your advice, all of you?
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's a stat that I think the UN came out with saying, or the World Economic Forum, that any business that embraces sustainability today has a 5 to 10 year head start on those that don't. That's important. So strategists, long-term thinkers say, yeah, this is important. Let's stick with it. I mean, this is not below the budget line right now.
Yeah.
But other businesses don't have that foresight, and they're just trying to pay salaries.
Leanne, you talk about the agility of being a small business. What do the next Q3, Q4 hold for you? Like, how do you adapt? Do you just hunker down and hope for the best? Do you shift your wholesale? Do you have wholesale? Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I sell wholesale to some shops and cafes and a tech company in London has happy Larder tea bars throughout their office, which is nice. And I sell to consumers. I mean, for me, if sales drop, they drop. I'm not in a position to drop my prices, but equally I've not increased them, even though costs of everything has gone up.
Okay.
Because I'm small, I am agile, so I buy as I need to. So I'm not holding tons of stock that I need to get rid of. I just buy as and when I need to buy more stock. Which is, I'm in a really fortunate position, and as a company that launched right before COVID with a product to go into cafes, I've just learned from day one, you just have to roll with it. I think
would your dream be to be more consumer facing, or you'd rather get into supermarkets?
I haven't gone down the road of trying to get into supermarkets, but I am part of a group that works with challenger food brands to try and get into supermarkets.
Okay.
And I spent COVID on calls and webinars, and actually it just completely put me off.
Right.
Because what you see in supermarkets is, for example, the 3 for 2 or the 20% off, 30% off. It isn't the supermarkets that take that cut, it is the brand.
Yeah.
And they have no control over that. So fundamentally, if I'm selling direct to consumers, one, the profit comes to me, which for my business is helping a woman escape domestic abuse. But I'm also more in control of my business than some company whose only objective is to produce a return for shareholders.
Yeah.
So there's nothing. Look, we live in a world where there are so many of those businesses exist. But when we make our day-to-day choices, we have the power over who we spend our money with. And as consumers, we think we don't have a lot of power, but our purchasing decisions drive so much more, good and bad, because it's also consumers demanding cheaper milk, cheaper bread, cheaper this, cheaper that. And so what we need to do when times get tough is not drive prices down by demanding cheaper products. It's just buy less, eat less. We have an obesity epidemic. We have a crisis of environment because we eat and consume too much. Buy better and buy less. And everyone will benefit from that.
I agree. No, I really do agree. It's basically what my whole business is founded on. So in some weird way, maybe this cost of living crisis will finally, they'll be like, oh, she's been banging on about this for a while now. You know? So who knows? There could be a positive spin on it. I want to end with some actual examples, how you live your life, which brands you like. I'm going to just do quick fire and then we're going to wrap things up. Then we're going to end. We're going to go, I promise. We're going to have a cup of tea. And okay, Aisling, an example of, in your day-to-day life, give us an example of something that you implement in a better way than perhaps your neighbour or your friend.
I would definitely say the takeaway for everyone here would be to Google the Sustainable Development Goals. So if you look around, there's like loads of signs with the Sustainable Development Goals. The best academic minds in the world have come together and they have figured out what we need to do to get the world into balance, right? They've all come together and there's more than one goal, there's 17 of them. But as my professor used to say, they don't do anything. They just like go to the gym, eat less, right? And we have these boards of them like just all over, which all the countries have signed up to. So have a look at them, figure out which one resonates with you and then look at the sub-indicators and maybe you can even make a business around it the way you have. Or just kind of fly your flag for that. What's the SDG that really resonates with you? So that's what I would say.
Mica, what about you?
Remember I talked about Rana Plaza and I found that very shocking. After that, I did something known as a fashion fast, where I spent a year not buying anything. And you know what? It changed my habits and it changed my psychology. And that I recommend anyone to do it with clothes, with plastic, with whatever. Do something for a certain amount of time. Take that challenge that is going to change your habits. Because honestly, it's so much of our consumerism is psychological.
I agree.
Like it's just made up. And after that, I just stopped buying stuff. Turns out I don't need it. Turns out 60% of the things that I go to shops to buy because I need, I actually already have in the back of my cupboard. Like I just should have looked. And we kind of accumulate. And I did it. I got myself off my cellophane addiction. I don't use that anymore. That's not in the house. Like you just have to challenge yourself. Do a kind of a fast or whatever, and it is like you'll come away not just with new, more eco habits, but also just like a new way of thinking about things, you know.
Mine is my keep cup. I bought it in the Hampstead Norris shop. I mean, it's such a simple thing. It brings so much joy to me, and that's my next goal, is to address the likes of Cafe Nero and Starbucks and Costa, because that for me is the biggest shock, is the coffee cup culture, and it's become a trend and it really shouldn't be, and we simply don't need it. So buy yourself a coffee cup in the shop. They're really good. Stick one in your children's stockings at Christmas, all that kind of thing. It's just a tiny change, but it packs down, goes in my handbag, and I now try to remember every time I leave. Akhil, I'd love an example of positive change that makes you hopeful in any guise, in your business, in what you've seen from companies who've worked with you, in your family, like anything. I'm putting you on the spot, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. To be honest, I see a lot of doom and gloom around when it comes to sustainability or climate change. And I feel there's a lot of, and I'm not hopeful, I'm a realist. And I see that everyone I speak to has never turned around and said, what are you talking about? In the last year or so. 2.5 years back, they were like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
In my family was like, are you sure you're quitting tech and moving to sustainability? It was that. And now they're like, what a great idea. Yeah. So, prior to the pandemic, like you said, cafes and going and selling sustainability was a bad idea just prior to the pandemic. But I feel that everyone we speak to wants to change. So there's no it's not the businesses are evil or something.
No.
I feel that there's a lot of hope for change, and everyone we talk to is like, yeah, let's get on with it. How do we do it? So I think that's really interesting. And since you're talking about brands, and I'm not a fashion expert, but I think technology-wise, it's really interesting. A lot of the large tech companies want to do right, because if they're caught wrong, you can imagine they're the largest market caps in the world with most amount of money. But Apple and Google, for instance, two good brands which most of us use in the rooms. They use 100%, their servers or the place where they host a lot of our information is all run on renewable energy. So it's 100% green. So it's something to keep in mind. If you're using Gmail, it's running on green energy at the back end. If you're talking to Siri, which doesn't work as well as talking to Google, but if you are, then that's also running on green energy at the back. So it's really important to start getting tech companies to also choose correctly and store correctly and make sure that at the back end technology is being powered, because not many know it, but technology is about, they consume these data centers that they create, these big rooms full of servers, they consume about 4% of, they create about 4% of global warming. So that's a lot. And emails alone, every email that you send, to everyone that goes out, there's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions as a result of that. So technology has got a massive footprint. And the last thing I'd say is e-waste. So if we can all be a little more conscious about e-waste.
Yes, I got an email
per capita, so the e-waste in this room per person is about 20 kilos per year. I'm not saying all of us, but I'm saying if we averaged out the UK population, it's 20 kilos per year is how much we throw away. And that's a suitcase load, when we go on a holiday, pretty much. And that's a lot. So we can try and reduce that. That's a big deal. Reuse, refurbish, recycle, just become more conscious about e-waste. Sorry, that was my
So you mean like unsubscribe from newsletters we never read? Like, so it's not just...
No, what I meant,
like
no, e-waste, the printer at the back of the room,
Oh,
so
right.
working, try and get it. I just
It's
saw
an
that.
eco-printer.
I just saw that. Or our
don't
phones,
print
or our phones.
Yeah.
Just make sure we're not throwing, electronic goods away. If we can have them repaired, or if somebody else can use it. Like the new iPhone just launched 2 days back. Everyone's
So
going to
now we
run for the
wanna
iPhone 14, and that's just it's like fast fashion. They just want to try and get the next cool new device. But if yours is working, keep doing it. And now Apple's being pressurized to change their batteries and make sure that's workable. So just become a bit more conscious about electronic waste is what we're saying.
Also, you'll get B Corp points, won't you? If you recycle your old laptops and stuff.
No, I'm definitely clinging to this one. I'm going to leave it there because we've slightly run over, and I'm conscious that you've got a lot of other things to go and enjoy. But thank you for taking the time, because it has been quite a long one. But hopefully you've taken just even a smidgen of insight from our brilliant panellists. And I want to thank you as well, because we've all come from different parts, some from far, far away, and some just from, right here. But the main thing is, I don't want you to get anxiety about this, or for your children to get anxiety about this. This is a learning curve for everyone. No one has all the answers, not even the scientists. And so I think it really is about tiny changes that collectively make a much better impact. So thank you very much for your time.